Welcome to another episode of B2B Marketing Futures, the podcast for B2B marketers sponsored by AdSact. Today's conversation is about B2B go-to-market in the AI era. Over the last 12 to 18 months, AI has moved from something experimental to something that is actively reshaping how GTM teams operate. From outbound and lifecycle marketing to RevOps, content, personalization, AI is now embedded across the entire motion. So that creates a real tension from marketing and revenue leaders. On one hand, execution is faster and cheaper than ever. On the other, differentiation is becoming harder. So if everyone has access to the same tools, what actually sets strong GTM teams apart? So to explore that, I'm joined by 4 leaders who bring very different perspectives across SaaS, enterprise, RevOps, and GTM transformation. And before we dive in, I'll ask each of you to briefly introduce yourselves, your role, and what your GTM focus looks like today. Maybe Laura, would you like to start?
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me, Joaquin. So I'm Laura. I work at DevRev. DevRev is an AI native company that combines all your structured and unstructured data so that you can run both LLM agents on it and execute on workflows. And I am responsible for the go-to-market architecture and engineering of the organization. I also take care of the SDR function, which is going to be relevant in today's discussion.
Yeah, thank you so much. Welcome. Alex, welcome.
Cool. Thanks for having me. Yes, I'm Alex. I'm Alex Vinnis. I'm based in London. I'm in Munich today, and I work for Personio, leading their demand generation team. Personio are a HR SaaS company, so we automate everything from recruiting to payroll and absence management and everything else in between. Yeah, everything inbound from awareness to pipeline is what I obsess about, basically.
Thank you so much for joining us. Millie, welcome.
Yeah, hi everyone. Great to be here today. My name is Millie Beetham. I lead go-to-market innovation and strategy at ZoomInfo. ZoomInfo is the B2B go-to-market intelligence platform. We're really closing that execution gap for all teams across go-to-market, sales, marketing, and ops. My focus is really on building these sort of scalable systems for revenue generation and leveraging, really unique data to be able to do that. It's a fun time to be in that space, given all the innovation around AI. I'm really excited for the discussion today.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Jessica, welcome.
Hi, I'm Jessica. I'm the director of B2B go-to-market transformational advisory at Adobe. And, I've spent about 10, 15 years being in marketing operations, driving technology to enable, the next innovation and advancement in marketing to support the revenue funnel, marketing and revenue and marketing and sales together. And now I've joined Adobe to be able to bring the thought leadership and the best practices and the future-looking state to all of marketing. And I focus on B2B, and it's a great time. Like Millie said, it's a great time to be in what we do. And Adobe is, building the tools, the AI, the agents, and the tools that really that help enable the things that we do every day in marketing and sales.
That's great. Thank you so much, Jessica, and thank you all for those great introductions. Let's start with what's actually changing on the ground, because AI has changed and has been part of GTM conversation for a while now. But over the last year or so, it's moved from theory to actually execution. And I love to understand what's generally made a difference versus what's been more hype than help.
I think this space is moving so fast. And I think there's always been throughout the career, what's the future of work? I think this is probably the first wave I've certainly seen in my career that's kind of moving week by week. I would certainly say within the last 6 to 9 months, I've certainly seen the ability for marketing teams to increase their frequency. And what do I mean by that? I mean executing quickly. I think everyone in marketing and demand gen has so many different competing priorities now. I think thankfully most people understand that they need to get that balance right between demand creation, demand capture, investing more in brand, maybe than they were doing in performance marketing historically. And so we've got a lot of stakeholders, a lot of things we need to do. Day to day, I would say that's the main area that we're investing a lot into AI, areas around efficiency improvements. So we use a tool called LangDoc internally, and that gives us a secure access to all of the leading open language models. And we use this across every area of the business. We have almost like a gamification of this internally in the company, where we see the adoption of that by different functions. And our overall mission at Personio, beyond what it is for our customers and our revenue goals, is to be an AI-powered GTM team. And I think we've made a lot of progress doing that. We now use, I think everyone in the organization uses AI in pretty much every aspect of the work that they do. And I think it's really just getting that balance right now between increasing your frequency, efficiency, and giving you headspace to really operate on some of those, particularly the brand piece. At the same time, not taking that away from having unique positioning and the fundamentals of marketing. So we do it now in creative analysis. I think account hygiene has been exponentially tackled through AI, particularly on the PPC side. I think there's a perfect use case for a lot of that. And really a lot of the tasks that were quite difficult for marketers is getting close enough to the customer and digging into qualitative data. So we have set up agents for gong calls. We've got really structured close lost analysis now. I see the work that we're doing on audience segmentation. When marketing teams got access to these huge pools of data, it presented a lot of opportunities for us. But I think when you don't have that data structured, like performance marketing is a function I own, for example. And when you try to build this creative testing model and you have thousands of different ads live across several different platforms, and then you need to work out what's working on an individual ad level, you're talking about things that can't scale, right? When you've got a team of 3, 4, 5, 6 people. So it's trying to find that ability now to have that competitive edge, and particularly in digital marketing, and structuring previously unstructured data. And I think that's what's worked really well for us is deploying in areas around data analysis, data structuring, and obviously, all of the well-spoken about use cases within the day-to-day admin that isn't really the sexy stuff that marketers talk about, but creating a campaign brief, structuring some of your MBRs. These things take days sometimes to produce, and they're coming at the expense of what I could classify as real marketing work. And I think that's what we've able to do. Creating an MBR used to take 5 days, now pretty much takes 2 hours without cutting down on the quality. We're able to produce creative analysis across all of our ad platforms. And these aren't things that I would be able to ask of my executives before, because I knew if they did that, they would have to have huge trade-offs that were just unjustifiable.
I think with AI has come so many great things, but I also think it's caused a lot of chaos, right? Which is we are, the pressures from everywhere, right? To be more efficient, to use AI, to adopt AI. And to your point, the technology is changing so fast, but it's, you kind of get this immediate short term, yes, we can make things more efficient, but it's not sustainable in terms of, okay, after that immediate short term, then what happens? But I think also it's the chaos of if we throw everything at the wall, spaghetti at the wall, we can do things with AI. But where I see kind of, especially in larger transformations, it's the strategy. Strategy is still important. AI needs to be helping with good. It can amplify good things. If you put it on bad data, bad processes, it's not going to fix everything. So I think there's a lot of expectation setting, because I do get into, a spectrum of conversations where some people think AI is just magic, AI will just do it for me. There's still that very much human strategy element, and what you feed it will amplify good. And if you feed bad things, it'll amplify bad. And I think what we're seeing is the first wave of hey, AI isn't really helping. In some cases, I'm well, did you have a strategy? Did you think it through? And it's this idea of we need to slow down to move fast. Can we take a pause and what is the strategy, and rework all the strategy? And Alex, you talked about kind of rethinking some of the processes. The processes that we have are assumptions on the old way of working. And so it's almost giving ourselves permission to reevaluate and blow up our processes, and what assumption was made because to create that process, and what assumption doesn't exist anymore because of AI, right? A great example is, when we do ABM, when we do targeting, what do? We sit around a room, we sit around a virtual table between sales and marketing. We have to choose the top 10 accounts, the top 100 accounts, the top 50 accounts. We've all been there. Why? Because to focus on more than 50 or more than 100 in a very bespoke way is very time and resource intensive. But is that really true now with AI, right? So it's an example of what are the assumptions that we've made in the past 20 years of our career that we are wait a minute, and what things that we can change with AI. And that's in every single day. I was using one of our tools, and, I didn't know how to enter in a ticket. And what's the first thing I did? I slacked my colleague. I didn't even think to be oh, maybe I should ask the AI agent in the tool how to do something. right? It's the assumptions that we did. And I'm like, I was like, I'm just going to see if it can answer my question. And it did. And not only did it answer my question, it actually asked me like, would you like me to do it for you? So it's really changing behavior on so many fronts. And I'm sure we're going to get into change management.
I think ABM is such a good take on that one as well, because you just see, I don't know if anyone's been like looking at their inbox recently, but I'm seeing so many people who are clearly kind of creating like these AI orchestrations, particularly through things like Clay. But again, even when you're creating like these channel synergies and you can, get this harmony between inbound and outbound, you're still just shoveling generic unpersonalized offers, right? So it's like you've created maybe this well thought out engine, but when the fuel is still just unpersonalized guff, it's like, what are we really achieving here? It's just table stakes at the end of it, right? So I think, ABM's a classic one where, as always, people over-engineer the engine and don't focus enough on the offers and the fundamentals.
It's really interesting. There's two things I want to talk about in terms of like the change. Like what I've seen that is really, really fascinating too is that you sort of had, for a long time, we all spent as leaders trying to define the strategy at the top or in sort of a centralized way and then disseminate that down. What giving AI tools, whether they're like homegrown, we have an incredible homegrown internal ZoomInfo chat tool that there's hundreds of different tools attached to it. It connects into basically our entire knowledge base across our organization. It's super powerful every single day. What that creates though is this like bottoms up approach of like every single individual can sort of run their day-to-day, their business in the way that they want because they have all the answers to things at their fingertips. They don't need to, Jessica, to your point, like they don't need to Slack somebody else to get an answer to something. They don't need to, book a meeting to sort of talk about the context of what's going on at some account. Like they know all of that information because it's being fed from all the players that they would normally reach out to get that understanding. And so what I've seen across a number of like customers that I work with, but also like internally and in conversations, with other go-to-market leaders, there's this sort of flip that's happened of like, instead of strategy coming top down, there's a lot of sort of letting 1,000 flowers bloom and figuring out the right way to do things coming from the bottom and then sort of like floating up. I think that's incredibly powerful for small companies. I think that gets incredibly noisy and potentially problematic at large enterprise companies. So depending on where you are, there's sort of like good and bad to that, and sort of navigating through how do you sort of enable or allow for both to be most successful, I think is an interesting like shift in sort of how we're like thinking about our go-to-market motion every day. And the other thing I want to call out is like, we always talk about how AI, like what has AI changed over the last like 12, 18 months or whatnot from the perspective of generative AI. But I think what's really fascinating from my perspective is I've seen also the democratization of like AI ML. So like on the ML side, like now so many leaders, organizations, et cetera, are pursuing data science initiatives from the perspective of, I want to build a propensity score, I want to build a behavioral score, et cetera, and get really thoughtful about how they're doing, prioritization across their TAM, across their serviceable addressable market, for example, and being able to do that, not because the technology didn't exist, like that absolutely has been around forever. It's that the access to be able to do that, or the contextualization of that score, right? Why was it scored 100 versus 75 or whatnot, comes from being able to take that data and then and use the generative functionality on top of that to make sense, to understand, right, the context behind that scoring, et cetera. So it's like you're able to access and use that, right, in your go-to-market motions across marketing, right, across all digital marketing channels, across, ABM teams, field marketing, using that sort of prioritization and scoring models in new ways, but having different context on how that score is useful to them, depending on their channel, depending on sort of what engagement model, right, they're in charge of.
Yeah. Another thing I'd say as well is people making big organizational changes potentially prematurely. Like we don't need copywriters anymore. We don't need creative directors. We don't need designers. And I think that will be something that will come back to bite people, because I think, if the competitive advantage right now is implementing AI to simplify some admin and take care of something like this, the basic lifecycle tasks, then very quickly the competitive advantage will be going against the grain with this tide of AI. For me, pound for pound, investing in design, investing in creative direction, investing in world-class copywriters is always going to be a smart investment for marketing teams, particularly if you're in a saturated category, which unfortunately I do live in the HR tech space. So I think for executives, there's already that expectation that you can potentially go leaner than you want to, or you can dial down creative skills, or you could just get a RevOps engineer to suddenly take care of all your lifecycle marketing. I think it's, who knows what's going to happen, or the development of these AI models. But I think it feels reactive and potentially premature to be making huge calls on what skill sets are redundant before I think some of these things have truly materialized.
Alex, I agree with that more. It's like, so it must be incremental, right? Like this idea that you just strip the entire function out. Well, who's the builder? Who's the ideas person? If you take that person out of the conversation, you just have a builder, and that builder might not have that context, and Jessica's point, the strategy to be able to actually design that system effectively.
I've been kind of lucky, joining an AI native company about 18 months ago. We already were AI native. One of our products is actually a CRM product, and we do a lot of RevOps workflows and stuff like that. So in terms of go to market, I would say that I started in an AI native workflow already from the beginning. And so I'd say that for me, it's less around what has changed in the last 18 months than what I was doing before. And what AI has given me is much more efficiency in terms of how we actually make decisions, because the data is available to us and it's so quick. And Alex said that, he said MBRs are very easy to create, right? And the other thing too around execution is that while AI has made it a lot easier for us to make decisions, I think what everybody's saying here is that AI can only move at the speed of human transformation. So even if the AI can do amazing things, and it can do all these amazing workflows, and it can generate new content and all of those things, to just what Jessica said, if we didn't have a thought process, or we weren't thoughtful about what the strategy was, are we changing the processes, and the people are not willing to change at that speed, that's probably where I see the biggest obstacles, that the technology maybe is ahead of where we are in terms of change management.
It's always the humans. Right? People, processes, technology, and now I'm on the fourth leg is change management. And change management is constant. And I think there's a big shift, right? Because we usually think about, we're going to go through this transformation. There's a beginning, there's an end, and as a company, we're going to go through this 3-year transformation. Well, I think right now, because of the speed of the change of technology, transformation is constant, and you are not only going to do a phase, and we've gone through this here at Adobe as well. For example, our content team and our content transformation, we went through a transformation 18 months ago or 2 years ago to redo all of our processes. And, we drink our own champagne and use our own products for content, content AI production, all of those things. But then we're also starting a next phase of transformation because the technology has moved again. So I think it's this idea of, people humans that need to let go of when we change is not failure. But part of change management is acknowledging and grieving for, acknowledging the death of the old ways of doing things so that we can move on to the new ways, right? The 5 stages of grief of okay, we are all now sitting here and we will now give a obituary to the way our old processes are, and to let go, to try this new way. And this new way may be only on the shelf for 12 months, but that's not failure. It's, this idea of failing forward. And as a yoga teacher, I actually teach the same principles to my MOPS and marketing operations team of letting go and moving forward, because we do, right? How many humans do you know are but this is the way that I've always done things, and they just don't want to let go. But how do we help them let go and move forward? And like you said, Laura, we can only move so fast as the humans will go. And change management needs to be built into kind of our day-to-day lives, I think, and go to market. And Alex, to your point about what are new functions that need to be created? Transformation offices, AI transformation offices, change management offices, learning and development for technology, So I'm a big proponent of the marketing technology team or some centralized team within an organization that's responsible for learning and development, right? Because it's no longer, let me send this launch email, we put this new tool in, have at it. That doesn't work anymore.
I love how you framed that, Jessica. Transformation projects do not have a start and end date anymore. It's an ongoing transformation. If we want to stay current, transformation is something that's just on.
I also think, Jessica, what you just sort of alluded to is and back to Alex's point on sort of omitting a whole function is going too far too quickly, right? All of a sudden you don't have the person who's designing the systems. But I do think what you're alluding to is you can there might be new functions to create to support some of that, Or even go a step further to say, well, what if the organizational structure is not serving you, right? The current organizational structure. So it's not, let me omit content marketing as a function, but how does content marketing and my advertising team, my demand gen function all sort of restructure a bit to support what is now new in terms of the workflows that we've built? It might be moving the, pieces on the board a bit. I'm seeing that slowly happen, definitely at like these larger organizations that we work with. It's more reorientation of the function or functions, right, within a department versus the omission. And I think people need to remember that that's a worthy exercise right now, right? That's a really worthy exercise.
I was going to give you an example of like how we've done it, internally. And I think there's a couple of themes. One, AI has enabled context of your go-to-market to be able to use the data. If you think about the way that all of our marketing team, many of our marketing teams are organized, whether it's a small company or an enterprise, right? You have channel owners. You have, hey, I have an email team, right? I have a paid media team. I have a web team, right? They all sit happily. They're responsible for their things. They have their individual metrics. But a customer, a buyer doesn't think like that, right? We tend to ship our marketing org structure, right? And think about the experience that they are. So now AI is enabled to bring and loop all of the data in together. But the thing is, internally, our teams are still separated like this. And so the idea, right, is the idea of like your go-to-market is a journey. You're trying to create a journey or experience for your customers. As a customer, like, do you care if the message came from an email or a web or an ad, right? You don't care at all. That is your engagement with the brand. And so wouldn't it make sense now to think about having, a journey manager in your go-to-market team that strings and is at a horizontal layer that is purely focused on what is the journey? We've been trying to do, but we've been trying to do this for a long time, but the technology really wasn't there to enable that. But with this new wave of technology and AI and the opportunity that we're already blowing up all of our processes, our org structure, our way of thinking. We could have always done that before, but no one's ever going to take that risk. Why break what's work? Well, the current way of working isn't going to be working anymore. You can't just run the ads the same way you've run the last 5 years. It's not going to work. Your ROI is diminishing because also buyers are changing. The way their behavior is changing. So we've added in our, marketing organization a horizontal layer of journey managers that own an audience, that take the whole journey, that work with channel managers and marketing technology, in order to kind of put like our whole way of thinking on its head. And we've gone through that transformation in the last 18 months, 24 months. Because also customer, like us all, right? We're so used to now, like we want to interact with data like ChatGPT or like LLM. And so I think where the future is going to be going and changing is that, the way that our consumers and our buyers want to interact with us is going to be conversational. It's conversation. It doesn't matter on what surface, doesn't matter where in real life, but they want to have conversations, whether it's a real person or whether it's an LLM-like experience.
Jessica, you're obviously in my small zeitgeist group because I've had that exact conversation about the reorientation of the organization within marketing with just about every forward-thinking CMO I've talked with in the last 6 months, every single one. And I think, honestly, that's a super tactical thing. Like if you're on a marketing team, leading a marketing team right now, like you can take exactly that sentiment and start to look at your organization and go, okay, what are these like journeys I'm trying to build? And how am I thinking about my organizational structure, what people do every day as supporting, driving those end to end versus maybe the previous way of thinking about it, function by function, channel by channel, et cetera. It's amazing. I really do think that's like a really worthy exercise for people right now. It's like something very tactical that you can do. Obviously, it has big implications. It's not a one and done conversation, but I think it's a very worthy, objective to have on your sort of like priorities for the next 6 months.
Going back to what we talked about earlier, and Jessica said that, and you mentioned that our marketing organizations are very structured and we ship that experience to our customers. And then we talked about how we're going to go into become a conversational type of organization. Just thinking about that already makes me nervous because we're generally not good at having conversations, right? Conversations, I think right now, even between teams, a lot of what happens as in the breakdown of silos is that we just aren't able to express what we really need from each other. And when you think about conversing with the AI, you actually have to be quite explicit about, what it is you want. And if that history doesn't exist already of how people collaborate, then the AI is going to do the same. So going back to amplifying bad habits, that's what it's going to do. Similarly, if we're not good at managing our conversations internally to present one brand to the customer is going to get the same disjointed experience. So I love that we're moving to conversations. That's the natural way that we talk about it, but we're still not good at it.
It's picking the use case as well. So we have AI. AI is not a strategy. And I think my big advice to anyone would be focus on the problems that you're trying to solve for. And those problems were the same problems that we have had for a long time. And generally focusing on the customer experience is like the shining light that kind of guides you through this stuff. To kind of bring it back to that, we've implemented Qualified on our website. I think it's a really interesting technology and it has that conversational element to it. So now you can, everyone knows about AI SDRs and having real-time conversations. And I think you can, give people, certainly in the discovery phase of your buyer's journey, visibility of the product, or you can answer some of the basic qualification questions. And I think maybe there's a use case to a degree of an AI replacing a salesperson, but also in instances here, we're doing it where maybe the problem was that the sales process wasn't great in the first place, right? So the qualification process is kind of enterprise lead lifecycle process that everyone has in big companies, but sometimes that same life cycle is put in SMB companies for some reason. Like we're solving a user experience that was always terrible, and we're optimizing a terrible user experience versus going, hang on a second, like we could maybe do this with a human, but have a really good customer experience and index on the customer experience. So I think Jessica maybe made this point earlier on, we're optimizing old playbooks rather than taking a step back and going, how do we deliver an incredible customer experience when someone gets to know us and they're window shopping and they want to engage with us? AI 100% can play a role. It's operating in hours that we're not even working. So we have like hundreds of meetings booked a week, and people are genuinely having conversations with us on Sundays at like 11 a.m. I'm like, what are you doing, bro? But it's fine if they want to do that. But I think this idea that credibility and trust and specialisms and market knowledge that salespeople have is going to go away, and people want to buy a mid-ticket or a large ticket SaaS through an AI. For me, it's just crazy. I don't think that's how humans have ever bought things or will ever buy things, because these are fundamental things that are ingrained in our psychology, that we need that trust, we need that credibility, authenticity cuts through it. So it's not that AI is good or bad or isn't adding value, but it's going, okay, well, in B2B marketing in particular, we've had really, really horrible inbound lead funnels for a long time that have been built for far larger companies and have built on this kind of qualification that was all about improving lead quality at the expense of a good customer experience. And I think at times we need to just take a step back and go, hang on a second, like maybe this is the inflection point when we go, how do people buy our product? And is that the right way? And could we actually be having a process that has AI optimization, but AI isn't the sole answer for that optimization?
I was, one of the key customer experience challenges that I like to weigh is in the past, we were solving for 80% of the use cases, the most common ones. Like, for example, on your lead list, the process was to build for the enterprise sale. AI can do that qualification with you, but still solving for 80% of those cases. So what is worse? Now with Gen AI, the AI can actually solve for 100% because it can understand your intent, but it may not be accurate for the customer. So it may cause frustration on the customer side. Or on the other hand, you can solve for 80% of the use cases and still make it frustrating for the customer because they're not that ideal customer. So I think that's like sort of the balance that we are weighing here. Are we giving the customer a great 80% use case, or are we giving them a great 100%, but it's not accurate? So that's something I think about.
It's interesting. This part of the conversation where you guys are going with this makes me always think about like the real difference between B2B and B2C marketing. Like B2B marketers are always chasing creating that like B2C experience, right? Like we've always been chasing that of like, okay, like that in B2C, right? Like you as a consumer tell the company what you're looking for. And it's first party data coming from that consumer, right? Saying these are the things I'm really interested in. You don't have that in B2B. right? Like that person is not going to go out and like, hey, these are my preferences.
Why not?
But why not? So to your point, Jessica, it's like they are, but it was extremely hard to capture that. It was extremely hard to do that at that level of scale, especially as people, right, as professionals move around, right? Like your preferences as a consumer, like me, I'm shopping online, right? Sort of shift over time, but like I'm still kind of me. However, my preferences relative to the company that I work for shift all the time. So what did that create? Well, account-based marketing. And now I hate the term account-based marketing because everything in marketing today is account-based. But I do think we have the opportunity to actually do account-based marketing today. Like row by row, you have a journey specific to all of the top, hopefully prioritized set of your ICP, right? Like every single one of those journeys in theory could be created because you have this efficiency with AI. I think what we should be...
Stop being like on a PowerPoint presentation and start be living and breathing things, right?
100%, right? Like actually creating the account-based marketing experience for Personio, where across every single engagement channel, right? Every single persona that you target at that company is getting, right, that sort of swarm of your brand. That's actually doable. I really think that the only thing that was keeping us from doing that previously was people power. Like it was the ability to have enough human resources. Now what we're running into is like, how do you make sense of the data around that? And then that becomes sort of the next resource conversation. But it's not that the data's not there. The data is there. And so if you can figure out how to put that into your systems and build that, I think we have a really exciting opportunity to like truly reach
then
that.
You can talk to your data, right? Like think about like the kind of what the right AI, our behavior, we want to essentially in natural language talk to things that we couldn't really talk to, right? How many times have you gotten like an ebook? It's a 45-page ebook. Like just summarize it for me. You just want to talk to it. Right now, AI allows you can do that. With data and data sets, what is our, I used to run the marketing analytics team. So my whole team built the data model and then built dashboards, right? You submit a ticket, you want a report. It takes a bazillion years to do because it was hard, to produce this report. And they're like, well, okay, but I will have the next question. And you go through the cycle. Don't you just want to talk to your data, right? And thinking about how the future of our engagements, of how we interact with information, right? Alex, going back to your point of like, because I used to also own BDR operations in my past life, right? So when people had questions and they were so bespoke, we needed to put a human, aka a BDR. We were trying to insert ourselves in a way, right? The hand raisers, we think you want to talk to humans because we think you have a question and we point you to a BDR. Well, what is the assumption that we're making? That they can't find the information on their own because right now we throw them onto the website. Think about all the things that we do from a marketing perspective where we drive them to the website, we drop them off and we're like, good luck. I hope you find what you're looking for. Right? And we lock things down like we will send you to this webinar and we will not distract you until you register for this webinar. But if you don't want to register for your webinar, then I don't know what to do with you. Right? But now if we're having a conversation through an LLM-like experience, that's what we're trying to solve for their customer experience. That they're trying to answer a question. They're one bespoke, unique question that is different from the next person, that's different from a different persona at a different company with a different context. If we can do that with AI, then why are we sending them to a human? And why are we trying to AI-ify a human when all we need to do is just answer their question? What is the problem that we're trying to solve?
Yeah, and well, I've been really enjoying the conversation. And I think that the concept that everything that we have been discussing today is about a brand, right? Is about like a brand is not a logo, is the result of innovation, is the result of human relationships. And good brands at the end of the day are the ones that have good customers or that have more centricity, that understand the purpose of the business, that branding is the outcome of the company's total actions, the reputation, the value it delivers, right? If we are talking with customers in a natural way because we have processes in place internally, then how we communicate with the external world is just a consequence, in my opinion. And at the end of the day, we need to provide value, right? And a brand must provide that value and utility. Yeah, I'm curious, how do you see that connection between everything that happens internally, how good brands can transmit that to the rest of the world, and how good brands are leveraging AI in this context?
I think it's like, I mean, everything that we're talking about this, I think sometimes the AI conversation creates this kind of simplification of how people buy. It's always, connect pain point to X persona, insert solution copy, away you go. I've definitely bought technologies before. I think everyone buys everything through a combination of, the emotional part of it and rational. You buy from people, you buy from, I think particularly in the next few years, I think cyber and security will be a big focus for everyone. You don't just want to buy a technology, you want to make sure that data is secure, particularly as we all lean into LLMs. But, I've bought platforms before subconsciously and sometimes consciously because I really like the people that work there and I like the branding that they do, and the thought leadership builds authority and credibility for that brand through me. And there's emotional triggers as well as rational triggers. And I think sometimes that we look at these new life cycles that we can build with AI, and it lacks a creativity, but it also lacks a holistic look at how people shop today, which has always been through a combination of these different areas. Like I said before, I think AI can provide a lot of value in discovery basically mean from consideration through to speaking to an AE and then kind of getting some sort of demo. But it can provide value there because I think that part of our buyer's journey, particularly in B2B, was always elongated, was always filled with friction, and it's just been a bit rubbish. And I think, really the top of funnel layer, where brand is not really just top of funnel, it's everywhere, but then also within that deal cycle, I just think everything still needs to be a human connection, and you need to have that, obviously rational points addressed, but you're not just going to get it through an email cadence and then suddenly buy, like a 200, 300 grand a year enterprise cloud solution. It's just nonsense. It's not going to happen. So you can remove friction points with AI, and you can build, I think, 3D, 4-dimensional personas, which is great. But this, I think the theory around this and the conversation around this really sometimes just focuses on the rational, and I don't think it focuses on the emotional side, which is obviously the role that brand plays in marketing overall.
I was going to say, if a human is making a decision, right? I mean, this is like, standard psychology 101. Like when we make decisions, it's 95% emotional, 5% logic. We are humans. Unless we have said hey, we're going to pass on AI. We're going to let them make the decision. We are still humans, and we are still selling to humans. And humans make decisions 95% emotional, right? Because at the end of the day, when you've bought a tool and it's, $1 million, it's like, okay, well, I can't make the wrong decision, because if I make the wrong decision, what's the risk of getting fired, right? That's a very emotional decision. And AI isn't going to think like that. That's a very, very emotional decision. And so I think the brands that win, the brands that around trust is really around that governance, right? Governance and security. But it's almost like it goes back to, I think the companies that are going to win are the companies who remember how to be human and how to interact with humans. I think personally, the companies that can give really amazing, creative, bespoke, in real life event and experiences, I think, because we're going to swing to AI, and I think we're going to swing back the other way, because humans crave in real life. And I think that the brands that can land that, the B2B brands that can land like amazing in-person experiences, because AI can't touch that. You can't take that physical interaction between people and the emotional connection. Just even with us, right? Here, talking to each other about a topic, right? We're bonded differently. Humans, that's all emotion. We've said a lot of facts, right? But it's different when we share and understand each other. That's a human element.
Yeah. I had a conversation with a startup founder a little bit ago, and he said that one of the things that he was very conscious about when designing his website and product messaging was he said that, Gen AI can produce all of this content for you. And that is why today we see a lot of company messaging narratives sounding exactly the same. And that's true, because Gen AI cannot become creative, right? That is something that we still as humans possess the ability to do. And so what he did was he said, we started on a whiteboard. He and his leadership team started on a whiteboard, drafted the product message, and then put it into the system. I thought that was very smart of, helping him preserve his brand. So it sounds different, and it really is. And, back to oversimplifying, Alex, I think that's one of the challenges, which is you don't want the AI to oversimplify for you so that you can no longer be different. The other thing I'd say, kind of going back to conversations and humans, is I work a lot with the SDRs, and a lot of them are very young. And a lot of them are using AI to help them, with their messaging, what they should say, and build scripts and stuff like that. And the same problem that this, a startup founder experienced or sort of realized is happening too with the SDRs, where they're getting scripts that make them sound like it sounds great. It looks great. It looks very polished, right? But sometimes it makes them sound like they're not really different from anybody else.
There's like a nuance, Alex, in some of what you said that I want to pick up on, which is I actually did a webinar quite some time ago now where we were talking about the concept of brand gen. So like the idea, I think you said something about, well, brand is at the top of funnel, but actually it's like throughout the whole funnel. I think that's such a critical note and like something that is, again, like such a tactical takeaway from this conversation, which is like, how can you actually make sure that you're thinking about brand as it shows up throughout your funnel? Like it is not just I created a bunch of brand awareness and now that awareness has turned into leads, right? They sort of top of funnel. I'm like maybe not even marketing qualified leads yet. And there's something to that, which then sort of, I think, connects, Jessica, into what you're saying, which is you need to be creating these brand experiences throughout your funnel, right? And those that truly is brand, right? Demand generation, if you will. And I think the important to your point, like that's because if we nail all of those other journeys, all of those other flows across our different engagement channels, if we nail the account-based marketing in its truest form, what else are you doing that makes you, Laura, to your point, different? Like what else makes you look different? And Jessica, those are those in-person experiences. That's the experiential. That's again where B2B has to like learn from B2C, which is how do you show up in the world with the people who are buying your products, whether they're buying from you face-to-face, probably doesn't matter as much as they need to know you, they need to see you, et cetera. And you need to make and create experiences for them to be able to do that and learn your brand. Again, this is like one of my, I swear that because B2C is trying to connect with that consumer on that personal level, human empathy, that personal connection, et cetera, is something that's sort of ingrained into B2C marketing. Well, in B2B, we think of it so much as like, well, I'm interacting with the company, so therefore I take the empathy or some of that personal out. But at the end of the day, right, I've now been on the sales side of our organization at ZoomInfo for the last couple of years. And I can tell you that those big deals still get done because we shook somebody's hand, took them out for dinner, understood what they like to order for lunch, right? Because we created that rapport in a number of scenarios. Now, all of the other things have to be happening. For sure, you've still got to do all of the swarm everywhere else. It's not that you can do one without the other, but the importance of that and thinking about it not as a top of funnel exercise or something that happens sort of separate from the rest of how you're thinking about like creating demand in the market, that sort of becomes part of your cohesive strategy throughout and beyond the sale, right? Once you've gotten that sale, which again, some of us marketers really, I think about, pre-sales versus post-sales, but it's throughout as well.
Of course. And what skills do you think are becoming more important in this context? I think we all agree that building a brand is even more important than before, and building that human connection and building trust and having the right culture inside to be able to do these amazing things is also super important. But what are the skills when you are trying to, when you're hiring, like what's your advice to people listening? What are the skills that you should build?
I'm hiring for two things. The first one is the ability to build relationships and EQ. That's the first thing. And the second one is discernment, which is around being able to sense check or fact check whatever you are looking, what narrative somebody's giving you, what narrative the AI is giving you. But those are the two things that I'm asking for right now.
That's so interesting. I feel like, Laura, in addition to some of those, I'm looking for people who truly are hardworking. Like I've watched people literally all of a sudden just not work, right? Like their day is right. Their day is like 4 hours long instead of 8 hours. Well, what are you doing with the rest of that time? Do you have a side hustle? Are you active in your community? Are you on and on and on? Like, how are you filling your time? Are you showing up as somebody that doesn't just do the bare minimum, right? And are you showcasing that sort of beyond maybe this core sort of professional role that you're being hired to do? I can't say enough about how, well, now my job is I can do it in 4 versus 8. It's like that mindset is not something that you want to be bringing necessarily into your culture as sort of this like weird byproduct of efficiency that's been gained over the last 12 months.
I mean, curiosity, right? All of these things that we're talking about are the elements of being human, right? It's like we want to emphasize the human aspect of it, the curiosity aspect of it, the go-getter kind of attitude.
I think really tactically though, like I hire from multidisciplinary backgrounds these days. So obviously like that's a little hard. You talk to somebody who's straight out of college and they're like, well, how the heck have I done marketing, sales, and ops, right? I haven't been in the workplace. But I do think it's something that you can look for, a few years into career. You can coach or manage too, which is you don't have to stay in your lane, or you shouldn't necessarily stay in your lane anymore. Go out and get a job in marketing, go then move into an operations role, go and try your hand at sales and be able to come back with sort of a multidisciplinary view of how systems are interoperable, how data works for different people, right? How you deploy successful campaigns using this channel versus that channel. I found that those sort of like jack of all trades folks are much better at thinking about the systems design that you need to be a true sort of incredible growth marketer today.
Yeah, I think I agree so much with everyone's points. For me, more like a soft skill, but it's practical for me, would be kind of initiative. I think more than ever now, and there's so much novelty in a lot of the AI stuff that's coming out, that it's so easy to just not critically think anymore and not be bringing new ideas to the table. Oh my God, I can create a landing page in Lovable in 10 seconds. Doesn't mean you should do it. Like you need to, I think that the real, if I look at the high performers in my team, the people that really move the needle are the people that aren't just playing a game that's already been played or copying something that they've seen on a LinkedIn post. You've seen this a lot in like CRO over the years. Okay, I know how CRO works. You just reduce the form fields. No, it's more about motivation and building that up in your end user and understanding them. So I think the thing I really index on now is the ability to be adaptable in the industry, in an industry that's changing a lot. At the same time, have someone who's naturally curious, who's got that initiative, wants to be innovative. You hear a lot about creating that sort of culture in your organization, in marketing in particular, where failing's okay. But I think now more than ever, people kind of have that anxiety about failing. It's like, no, you really have to take bold bets right now. It's never been noisier. Everyone's playing the same game, rinsing the same inbound tactics from like 10, 15 years. You have to be doing things differently. And doing things differently doesn't mean growth hacking some novel sort of tactic. It probably still means, getting to know your customers better and doing the fundamentals with more intention and just understanding positioning. I think I was going about positioning. That's the thing for me. Own a point of view and just hold on to that so much, because that is going to be what is going to hold you to the floor when there's this sandstorm of noise and email cadences that's going to hit everyone over the next sort of few months. Own your point of view and take bigger creative risks. Be bolder. And look for creative, curious minds. That's always the thing I'm looking out for. People with strong creative direction, people who are happy having a role for 2 years and it's probably going to be completely different in 4 years, and it doesn't stress them out because they're happy to grow and develop with that. They're the things that I always look for when I'm hiring and when I want to develop people in the team.
Well, thank you all for this great and thoughtful discussion. It's been great having you on the podcast, and I'm sure this will give listeners a much more grounded view on what AI actually means for B2B marketing. And yeah, thank you again. Thank you so much for joining us.